Yo, what's going on guys, it's Cynical and welcome back to another Kingdom Hearts 3 mod feature video. Today for you guys, we're going to be taking a look at a magic mod. This is super cool. It adds in a bunch of new magics into the game, as well as changing up a couple of the already pretty existing ones. We've taken a look at a lot of Kingdom Hearts 3 mods over the course of time, a lot to do with adding in new combo modifiers, changing up forms, adding in forms, but we've never really taken a look at a mod that either changes or adds in new magics, so this is definitely a cool one. This mod is known as Magic Overhaul, created by Tala9. Now, there is a bit of a catch when it comes to this mod. It is divided into two separate mods, and the unfortunate thing about this is you can't have both mods installed at the same time. So one half of the new magics is in one pack, another half is in another. I do hope in the future Tala does return to update this or actually create an entire new pack and put in all of the additional new magics and also changes to the pre-existing magic in one mod. They are apparently also working on Stopza as well as Ultima. As you guys should know, the magics in Kingdom Hearts derive from the Final Fantasy series, so the aim of this mod is to add in more of those Final Fantasy magics into the game. Stop has obviously been a magic in the Kingdom Hearts series before, but Ultima, which is an extremely powerful magic, one of the most powerful, has never actually been in the Kingdom Hearts series. Maybe in the future we'll see it, but this mod was going to eventually add that. So I do hope that eventually Tala ends up creating the ultimate magic overhaul, which combines both packs and adds in the magics that they were going to add. Now, just before we get into this, the way in which these magics are accessed is a little bit unusual. So you can't select these magics from the in-game command menu when you scroll down to magic. The magics just simply won't be there. They need to be shortcutted in order to be usable. Now, when you go over to the customize menu in the main menu, you will not see the new magics a part of the magic selection. Rather, you'll have to go over to links. Links have now been replaced with the new magics. Another thing you should know about this mod is that half of the new magics do not build towards situation commands. So for the magics that are a part of the new spells pack, these will not give you situation command arrows, whereas the new magics that are a part of elemental spells, that pack, those magics will. First up, we have Magnet. I was a little bit disappointed to see that Magnet didn't return for Kingdom Hearts 3. It was an extremely useful magic in Kingdom Hearts 2 to quickly group up a bunch of enemies, especially in those situations where you are getting overwhelmed, and gives you an easy opening. So this is going to add Magnet back in. I will say it doesn't work quite as well as what we saw in Kingdom Hearts 2, as obviously Magnet isn't an ability in the game, aside from, of course, Magnet Burst, which is part of Second Form. It essentially summons forth the electricity orb that Xemnas uses in his fights in Kingdom Hearts 3 and magnetizes enemies from a certain radius. The radius is quite small, but it does do what Magnet does, and it will spin enemies around and around and around. It is especially fun to use this against the humanoid bosses throughout the game, so for instance, data fights. As we know, Magnet doesn't just pull in and group enemies for a quick crowd control stun, but it also inflicts damage too, and that's also present here. It is actually quite powerful. It's like normal Magnet, this works really well as an AoE spell to inflict damage all around. The other helpful thing too is this will flick enemies up into the air, giving you even more time to breathe and to, of course, go into an aerial combo towards your enemies if need be. Next up, we have Flare, another very powerful magic from the Final Fantasy series, now a usable magic by Sora. It's not quite Zeta Flare that we see Donald performing at the end of the game, but still it is Flare nonetheless. Of course, canonically, Sora has performed Flare in the past. This is via Mega Flare, which is a super uber powerful attack. So yeah, seeing Zeta Flare in Kingdom Hearts 3 left everyone's jaws on the ground. But yeah, this basically adds in a very simple flare attack. It's essentially just a fire explosion. It does quite heavy damage. The attack radius on this spell is pretty decent, and on top of that too, it will also flick enemies airborne, making them vulnerable for an air combo. Next up, we have Holy, another famous spell from the Final Fantasy series. Holy has appeared in Kingdom Hearts games before, but has been rebranded to Faith. This spell will give Sora the ability to summon forth a pillar of light that lingers for quite a few seconds and does pretty decent damage. Now, while certain elemental weaknesses do exist towards certain enemies and bosses throughout Kingdom Hearts 3, Unfortunately, there is no weakness data that is applied to Holy through attacking enemies that are, of course, dark type. So basically, any of the Heartless, you'll pretty much just do standard damage, and I guess this makes sense because all of the enemies are darkness attribute, right? One thing I would like to see for the future of the Kingdom Hearts games is more weaknesses applied to certain enemies, not just elemental-based enemies, because those already exist for most Kingdom Hearts games, but I mean all around. It would be cool if every enemy had a certain weakness. Next up, we have QUAKE, the Earth Magic. Yes, QUAKE has appeared in 3 other Kingdom Hearts games in the past: Chain of Memories, Birth by Sleep, as well as Recoded. And I'll tell you, this magic is so much fun to use. It uses the effect that appears when Sora slams the Hyper Hammer into the ground, cracking the earth beneath his foes. This is a targeted magic, so you can lock on and use this spell from a distance. The reason why this magic is so fun to use, though, is for one, the attack radius of this is really good, and it absolutely flicks enemies into the high skies, almost into the heavens. So this is definitely useful for if you're in a tight situation with a lot of enemies, or in a boss encounter where if you want to start off with some nice damage and to flick them airborne for then an aerial combo, this really is the perfect attack. Next up, we have Judgment, a more precise thunder attack that still retains some attack radius. Now, thunder is usually the best magic to use in most Kingdom Hearts games due to its absolutely superior attack radius, on top of also doing crazy damage. And it really isn't any different here. When it comes to Judgment, this is probably the best new magic to use alongside of QUAKE. Sora will summon forth multiple spinning pillars of thunder, which will keep the enemy stun locked and will also inflict decent fraction damage, to finally finish them off with 1 Giga Elon Musk satellite laser beam. Now, Judgment has been in a Kingdom Hearts game before, though it wasn't a magic. This was in Chain of Memories, where it was an arrow-based strike raid. So this spell right here is more in line with Final Fantasy's version of Judgment. Next, we have Maelstrom. It was fantastic to see that water finally became a magic in Kingdom Hearts 3 after all of these years, and Maelstrom adds in a brand new water attack. It's essentially a water tornado. As is, water is a really good magic already in Kingdom Hearts. It gives you some iframes other magics don't. It also has great area of effect as well as damage. The only benefit you're really going to get here with Maelstrom is that it does a good job of lifting enemies up off the ground in similar fashion to, of course, like QUAKE, maybe not as high as QUAKE, so that you can go in for aerial combos. And the final of the new magics is Freeze, a new Ice Blizzard based magic. Blizzard has pretty good AoE, but this attack right here will improve on the attack radius. It summons forth 2 spinning projectiles of ice. It is actually the Lich's Blizzard attack that you have to fight against at the end of Kingdom Hearts 3. Now Sora can finally utilize this. Because the AoE is a little bit better here, it means that more enemies in the area will become frozen. The damage is pretty good, though Blizzard's damage was already half decent, so it's not too much of an improvement, but it's a handy magic to use if you are in a bit of a bind, surrounded by a multitude of enemies. Now, there was a bonus change that was applied to Donald's Meteor attack, which is obviously a situation command team attack that pops up every so often. Now, instead of Donald Meteor, it is just simply known as Meteor, and basically it's the exact same move except Sora summons the meteors without Donald's help. It's kind of interesting. It's not a new magic or anything. It's not like you can activate Meteor at will via the magic menu. It's just simply a little bit of a change to Donald's team attack. Donald is no longer part of the fun. What I found really interesting about this, though, is it now inflicts damage to your party members, and I don't believe this is intentional, but is hilarious nonetheless. Meteor! So moving over to the magics that have received a bit of a revamp, this is looking at both fire and water. The rest of the magics all remain the exact same. Now, fire is probably my favorite, and even when looking towards a lot of the new magics that were added via this mod, the change to fire is really cool, and even from like a story lore standpoint, makes a lot of sense. Now, honestly speaking, I was absolutely thrilled to see that fire returned as a projectile magic in Kingdom Hearts 3, just like it was in Kingdom Hearts 1. I barely ever used fire in Kingdom Hearts 2 because it felt so awkward to use. It was more of a defensive magic rather than an offensive magic. As you guys know, the way it works in Kingdom Hearts 2 is Sora will summon a ring of fire around him, and this will be enhanced as he goes up the tiers of fire. So this change is basically that. It sort of brings back KH2's version of fire, except it is now targetable, so it doesn't just spin around Sora anymore. He can actually choose to summon like the ring of fire around any enemy he is currently locked onto, which I think is an evolution of the version of fire that Sora used in Kingdom Hearts 2. It kind of combines the projectile fire that we saw in number 1, as well as the effect of fire in number 2, brings them together in this really cool evolution. And I think from a story standpoint, honestly, I think this would have been the better version of fire to use, because if you look at it, like, Blizzard and fire basically work the same, except fire's a little bit more stronger, and with Blizzard you get the effect of freezing enemies, which sort of works as a stun. But then we've also got water, so that kind of works as a projectile magic too. We've already got 2 projectile magics between both Blizzard and water, so kind of would have been cool to have had fire work more in this fashion that we're seeing right here. Fire's R has also been changed up to act the exact same way, and the effect looks really, really cool. And of course, this attack is simply devastating. And then looking at water, it's sort of been changed to act the same way as the change to fire here. So now when you summon water, instead of just a big splash, it will act as like a sort of spinning thing, just like fire does now. Already the attack radius of water in the game is pretty good, so between both versions here I really couldn't see too much of an improvement on that. Really the only thing I noticed here is that the effect appears different, but honestly speaking, the effect here definitely does look cooler. The Tsar version of water has not been changed. It will work just like normal water Tsar. So that's it, guys. That is the Magic Overhaul mod created by Talon9. Something really, really cool. We haven't really had too many mods in the ways of changing up the magics or adding in magics, so this is a really neat thing to see. And the reason why I think this is so cool is because I was a little bit disappointed with the magics we got in Kingdom Hearts 3. Like, again, it was so cool to see that water was finally added into the game. But I guess I really was hoping for a lot of diversity and choice when it came to magics. Only having 6, which honestly speaking is pretty standard for like the mainline Kingdom Hearts games. Kingdom Hearts 2 also had 6 magics to choose from. Kingdom Hearts 1 had a few more. But this is the big Kingdom Hearts 3, and Sora's also at a point now where he's used so many different magics. You would think by number 3 he'd be able to choose from a whole array. And I'm saying also too, like, in regards to magics, go outside of the normals. You know, we've got to have Blizzard there, we've got to have Fire there, we've got to have Thunder there. It was great to see Arrow make a return, even though I definitely would have preferred KH1 Arrow over KH3 Arrow. It works just like BBS Arrow, but like add in more, add like Quake, add in the holy attacks. In regards to Magnet, why didn't you add in Magnet? I miss Magnet so much. Reflect is kind of controversial, but like I'm a sucker for Reflect, man. I need my Reflect. Or just other magics like Gravity and like Mine. Yeah, the Mine magic. Yeah, I know. What about Balloon? Okay, maybe not Balloon. I do hope that for Kingdom Hearts 4, the magic variety is just a little bit better. Now guys, that's all for today. As always, the links to both of the packs are in the description down below. I'm Cynical. Hopefully you're having a fantastic day, and I'll see you guys real soon. Peace.